Digging through the past is not that hard. Rusted cars and broken shards, mining memories in an old wrecking yard. Echoes of laughter, whispers of pain. Time stands still, but the memories remain in this graveyard of steel. Welcome to the Wrecking Yard. I'm Jerry Wayne Longmire, and y'all are presumably still y'all. All are welcome in the Church of Internal Combustion, the ministry of ice, if you will, Daddy. Just show up with an open heart and a good attitude. So the car today is one of the cars I own that occupies some of the same time lineage as Rachel's Mazda. Whereas that story, I mean, y'all have heard that story. That story was mostly about me and her. This is about everything else that was happening, and really like right before we get together. I'm still wilding out, you know. I ain't gonna lie to you. I was living rough and fast and free and having a good time, or at least I thought I was. Before we get too deep, let's thank our sponsors. We even got a new sponsor this week with our new friend, Daniel Pulliam and Pulliam Stables. That's right, Pulliam Training Stables, South California. Their website is called thetrainedhorse.com. Now, granted, I know a lot of you know how I feel about horses, but after learning a little more about Daniel Pulliam, I feel better about his horses. I'll tell you that. I don't think he's training horses to be scared of plastic bags and drag people at 80 miles an hour sideways through ravines and stuff. I think, first of all, he owns and operates a stable himself. He's got decades of experience training horses, instructed. This ain't like a horse girl, you know, that's like, oh, I've been on horses all my life. This is a guy that legit, him and his family have decades of experience training horses. They offer lessons to all ages. They do private one-on-one lessons instead of like the group thing, so you really get your money's worth. They got a custom lesson program for children and adults with disabilities, which is really cool. I've read about a lot of good therapy and a lot of good results. Not just disabilities, but people with PTSD and people are neurodivergent. And they got horse training for horses of all levels and ages, so they can fix your crappy horse, probably. I like to suspect they could. But go check them out, man. Thetrainedhorse.com and Mr. Daniel Pulliam. So we're happy to have him on board here at the Wrecking Yard podcast. Of course, our dear friends over at Everyone Racers podcast about all forms of endurance racing. I think they just did their annual Gearhead gift giving guide. I haven't heard that one yet. I thought I got caught up last night because I was driving. I was doing a bunch of driving yesterday. Really, this whole week I've been doing a bunch of driving. So I've been listening to them all week, but I had to catch up on their SEMA episode, which I absolutely loved. And then the one I listened to last night was their hippie Thanksgiving feel good episode. I really enjoyed that a lot too. As always, I told you I'm a big fan of Christian Mental Ward. Go check out if you like racing, if you're into. Also, you should go look at their racing junk doc. They got some cool stuff for sale on there. You should go check that out too. But definitely check out Everyone Racers podcast. We love to have them a part of the family here at the Wrecking Yard podcast. All right. Whew. I am a little ragged today. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It has been a flurry of activity here in the last week or so. There's more than that. It's Christmas tour time. I love doing the Christmas tour. I love being a part of it, but it's taxing. It's a show with a lot of moving parts. We do singing, we do sketch comedy, and then also I do 25 minutes of stand up, and I got to kill. You know, I got to go out there and show them how I earn my money. But one of my big anxieties is singing in public. I really struggle with that. And but this year we got a really cool musician with us named Darren Scully, and he's been kind of coaching me and helping me better. And he's like, dude, you got a good voice. You just got to get out there and use it. You know, he said, you do it fine when you're doing stand up. Why can't you do what you're singing? So he's been helping me, and the singing's getting better. So I'm feeling less anxiety about that and enjoying that part of the show more. I'm having a little more fun on stage with it. Uh, I'm just always puzzled with what to do when it's not my time to sing in the song. Do I just stand there? Do I play an invisible tambourine? I don't have a clue what to do. I just feel like Ricky Bobby. Just is it my turn to sing yet? It's wild. I get on stage, tell people my life story, the most vulnerable truths about myself, and self-deprecating humor. No problem. But I do it anyway. I do it in a Waffle House. You know what I mean? I'll do it in a stadium or Waffle House. I don't care. But boy, you asked me to sing a Christmas song, and all of a sudden I'm just trying to hide behind the mic, and it's weird the strengths and flaws we all got. You know, I was thinking about this Ford Contour last night. We had a last night we had a it's Friday afternoon here. It's gloomy, a little cold, not too bad in here, but quite a bit chillier outside. Good gloomy day. I gotta get this recorded because I'm back on the road tomorrow. I'll be in New Braunfels Saturday night. Boy, I've been trying to kill that bug the entire time I've been setting up this podcast. Can't tell if I got him that time. Yeah, a little bit of a gloomy day, but I need to get this filmed and get this edited. So, and I also had to do some auditions today, and it's just, you know how to get. Well, it's feast or famine, baby, and I'll take the feast. I'll work hard. I was thinking about this last night. Last night I was in Granbury, Texas. We had a sold out show at a theater in Granbury, Texas called Granbury Live. And Granbury is a place that I couldn't point out on a map of Texas. And I have traveled Texas my entire life, but it's a big place. Mm. I can tell you it's about 4.5, 5 hours from my house. Invisible shit boxes are invaluable to comedians and musicians and your regular run of the mill old ne'er do well. I spent a good 4.5 hours hurtling through the darkness that is Central Texas last night. I mean, you get out there some of them parts of Texas at night, and there ain't no lights, and it's just darkness and emptiness on both sides of the road as far as you can see. And Texas is still wild and big, you know, in places. I can't help myself. I'm driving them nights, just looking out there and wondering what wondering what it must have been like. You know, some old cowboy be on his horse. I mean, I'd be walking because screw horses, but some old cowboy on his horse just going across nothingness for days at a time. You know, only to get eaten by a mountain lion. At least that's what happens to me in Red Dead Redemption. I don't even ride my horse at night in that damn game. I always get eaten by mountain lion. But I was having a good old time. I had one of those nights last night. You need one of those drives every once in a while to renew your dark spirit, your comedy soul. I did. I passed a Texas State Trooper. I was running at least 95 miles an hour. He was in the right hand lane. I run up on him so fast on a hill, I didn't realize it was an SUV until I was going by him. And I'm still not sure he even saw me. He never looked at me or nothing. I mean, I looked right at him like, oh shit. My one of my buddies, Jason Fitch, joked that you can't haul enough dope or people in a Mazda 3 for them to give a damn when it's that cold outside. I think there's some truth to that, but I had enough people and enough smoke for me, and it turned out to be one of those trips where I spent a lot of time communing with Uncle Bobby and a lot of time talking to God. I'm not here to convert you. I'm not a overly religious person, but I still got that little mustard seed in my pocket. You know, it's just always there. Is it because prayer and belief was drilled into me as a young man? Maybe. Does that matter really if it gives me some peace? Not one damn bit. I've been kind of struggling with some anxiety lately. Um, I do this sometimes when things are good, waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know, wondering when it's all going to come crashing down around my head. I wonder sometimes if it's a symptom of growing up have not. You know, that when you do get a little something or a little piece of success, you cling on to it. You just get a death grip on it because terrified it might go away at any minute. I read a story about Eminem one time, uh, and you know, obviously a lot of money, but Eminem's lawyer, I think, was telling the story, but his lawyer, kind of runs his finances and stuff, and he called him up one day and asked him. Eminem called his finance guy up one day and asked him if it'd be okay to buy a $12,000 Rolex watch. A guy with a net worth of $250 million is still worried that if he blows it, he'll end up back in a trailer with nothing again. That is how powerful the programming you receive as a child can be. Thankfully, I got to spend some time with my good friend Bill Martin, William Lee Martin. And he's good counsel. All my best counsel are stand-up comics because we're deeply flawed people, but we are all the same. It don't matter how different our acts up. If you do this job, there's something in all of us that's the same. And we run the gamut from well adjusted to completely foobar, you know. Now Bill is he's a godly man. He's very invested in his faith in a way that I'm not. But he's given me good counsel over the years, and he knows I'm a praying man. He caught me out. He was talking to me about it. We were driving to Oklahoma, and he was, he wanted to understand. He's like, I can tell. He said you just look stressed out, and he said I know you pretty well. He said I can tell that there's something on your mind, something bugging you. And I was like, yeah, I just. So I told him what I just told y'all. I explained my anxiety to him that I'm constantly on the edge of this. Like, oh, what if I lose everything tomorrow? And I got to figure out how to keep all this. And all my thoughts and energies are directed into trying to keep things alive and keep things going. And it's a fruitless expenditure of your energy, man. And he asked me flat. He struck me, man, because he asked me flat out. We're just hauling ass down the highway, and he said, Jerry, what if you are limiting yourself trying to hold on to what you already got? I mean, instead of being scared of losing it, try approaching it from a perspective of grace. Like a Lord, thank you for all the great things that have come my way. I can't wait to see what happens next. And it really struck me. And I spent a long time last night thinking about it. And I just when I talk to God, I don't, bend my knee and bow my head and that sort of thing. I do a lot of it in the car, and it's just conversational. He don't usually talk back, but if he ever does, you'll probably hear about a bad car wreck in a Mazda 3. I'm like Ray Wiley Hubbard. Please don't ever speak to me directly, Lord. But that perspective, sometimes you just need a little shift in perspective, and it had me rethinking the way I've been looking at things. Like, no, you should just be focusing on what you're doing, what you're doing for the future, and stop worrying about keeping a death grip on all this. Whatever this is going to be what it all is, no matter what happens. I don't know. It really struck me. I went to church at 95 miles an hour on 45, and on the way home, I'm feeling more at ease today. I did a bunch of writing this morning. I didn't get home about 3 in the morning, 3:15 in the morning, but the adrenaline of the show was wore off by then. I was out. And don't get me wrong, I still don't know what happens next, but what the hell gives me the right to expect to? Ain't none of us from the future. This is what I'm gonna stick an extra paper towel in my pocket for allergies. But that's about all the future I have mapped out right now. The Contour was the Ford Contour. It was a 2000, was it 2000 or 99 Ford Contour Sport red. It was a shit box that come around at the right time, right when I needed a good one. Y'all probably I'm pretty sure I told you, but after I sold that old Hyundai, I was still working at this joint called the Late Night Pie, and I bought this little Toyota pickup from his fellow ne'er do well at the Late Night Pie. Late Night Pie was it was off the corner of Elgin and Montrose, I believe. Westheimer, Montrose, Elgin, Montrose, and had like half a Volkswagen bus sticking out of the front of it, and it was dreamed up by this dude. It was a late night pizza place, but it was a raunchy little joint. And they had all kind of custom pizzas and stuff. But their deal was they delivered pizza to like 4 or 5 in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, something like that. It was really crazy. They were trying to get all the people got home and got the munchies and drunks that got home and all that stuff. It was a rowdy little joint. We had a little bar in there. I was bartender. We had our pizza chef, I think, was on heroin. You know, he was he was geeked out most of the time. It was a funny. There's an old joke in entertainment music. If you're a musician, you probably heard it. And there's old joke used to be the band shows up for practice. Oh no, we need a drummer. Somebody order a pizza. Right, silly little joke, but we had 3 delivery drivers, and one of them was a drummer for a rock and roll outfit, and the other 2 were drummers for punk rock bands. So you literally could get a drummer if you ordered a pizza from Late Night Pie. It was great. We got rowdy in that place at night. Whew. The guy that cooked up that place was a guy named Mike Bell, and Mike Bell was an interesting dude, man. He was At one point he was an artist and homeless, living in a U-Haul storage building, and just really living in there. He told me, he said there's a lot of nights, he said, I'd get there. He said it's like 7 o'clock when they're getting ready to close the gates, and you got to make a decision. Am I going to stay out all night, or am I going to go ahead and go to bed and camp out? Anyway, he somehow, I don't know the whole story, but he turned that around and made himself a bunch of money. He owned this joint. He owned another little bar called the Next Door Bar that I used to frequent quite a bit. It was real close to Rudyard's in Houston on Wall Drive. And we used to make jokes about him being the Donald Trump of Montrose, because then he bought a gas station. He was buying up all these little properties on Montrose. Guy got a head for business. He's a little outside of the box, but he's good. I always had good experiences with him. I don't have nothing negative to say, but he hired derelicts. He hired misfits and derelicts, and that's how he ended up with a stand-up comic that was a bartender and a bunch of drummers for delivery guys, and a couple guys whacked out on heroin doing all kind of other jobs. And one of his bartenders is a tall dude named Jason. There's no exception. Jason been in and out of the system. Trouble, troubles. And he was dating some little gal that worked there. I can't remember her name. She was a cute little thing. And they just made a lot of bad decisions. I remember one day she got some tax money. She got like $600 in tax money. I was like, "Oh, so what y'all do with it?" And he goes, "Well," she was like, "We could go ahead and pay our rent." And he said, "But I was like, baby, I say we just go all in, get a couple 8 balls, and throw down." And then that's what they did. Did not pay the rent. That Toyota pickup I bought from him, I forgot what I had. I got a rod knock or something like that, and He got pissed off at it. He's doped up, kicked the windshield in, kicked the back windshield in, kicked the truck. It had dents all up and down and everything. I bought it from him for like $200, rebuilt the engine in it. But then he got sent away, I believe, to prison. And I never could get the title on the truck. And titles were even harder to get back then in Texas. It's like 2005 era. I was pissed though. I put some time and effort in that little truck. I got it running really good. I was really happy with it. Couldn't do anything with it. Couldn't get a damn title on it. Sure wasn't going. Not with all the riding dirty I was doing back then. I sure wasn't going to chance driving it in and out of Houston, that sort of thing. It was a little bit of a spectacle with all the dents. And old Nurse Mike bought that pickup from me. Old Mike Kohler, the guy whose book I read, Mr. Stubborn Truth. He bought that pickup from me and put on his hunting lease. I don't know if he still got it or what all he did with it, but gave me a fair price for it. And I drove it over to his house while he followed me. And yeah, Late Night Pie was a rambunctious joint. I mean, we're supposed to stop serving it too, but we had cameras set up. We knew all our regulars. And as long as I was making money, I kept serving. It was just the way that place went. But it was crazy stuff. I mean, there was a lot of my tip jar every night was a combination of drugs and money. There was a lot of party favors going in the tip jar. And I ain't gonna lie to y'all, I was living that powder life. Problem was, the biggest problem I had at that point, because I'd had situations with it, but the biggest problem I had with it at that point was I had gotten really functional on it. I knew to do just enough every night to have a good time, but make sure I could still get up the next day and go do stuff. And once you get functional on something's when it really becomes a problem, because then you don't see it as a problem anymore. I was in there one day working. It was the comptroller. Texas comptroller is like the mafia, bro. They are they are like an organized street gang. Okay, the way they operate. And I guess Mike hadn't been paying some of his business tax or some of his sales tax stuff. And well, you get behind on that stuff, they come for you. And I was in Late Night Pie one day, one afternoon working, and had me a little package and was feeling good. Had a couple of my regulars in there. They was tipping me good. And we was having a grand old time slinging pizza and beer and telling lies. And I remember the door opened and walked this kind of short black lady with curly hair. And she was in a business suit and she had a badge on her belt and she had a pistol on her belt. Why does the comptroller need a gun? And she walked in with a constable who also had a badge and a gun. That's about when my paranoia started kicking in real hard. Like, oh God, they're here for you. Oh no, I thought they were all there for me back then. Oh crap, here they are. They're here for me. She walked up to the bar. She said, "I'm looking for Mike Bell." I was like, "He's not here right now." She said, "Well, I'm from the Texas Comptroller office, and he owes this much back taxes. And until that debt is secured, we're closing this place down." And she told the customers, "You guys pay your tab and leave. This business is being shut down." The constable walks past me. My little package is up under the cash register. That's where I can get it out real quick. Walks in between me and the cash register. I swear I almost ran out the door. Goes back there, and I hollered, "Chef." Just let him know. I said, "Chef, we got a visitor." And that constable looked at me. I don't know what them cooks were doing back there in that kitchen. I just need to make sure everything was cool. We have no reason for more cops to get there. And he told me, you guys go ahead and clock out. Y'all are done for the day. We're shutting this place down. Go ahead and close the kitchen up. They start, shutting down the ovens, doing all that stuff. Meanwhile, I'm frantically trying to call Mike. He's not answering the phone. And this lady steady talking to me about like lady, I don't know how any of this works. I don't know what taxes are. She goes, well, you're gonna have to empty. I was like, I'm not emptying a register for anybody. You know what I mean? Until like I'm taking care of all these guys' tabs and stuff. And finally, Mike Bell answers the phone. I said, brother, man, you need to get down here. He's like, no, it's fine, it's fine. Just let them do what they got to do. Just just go along with whatever they tell you. And when you get done, lock it up. Bring me the keys. I'll get this straightened out. Well, that's fine, but you're not the one standing here around a bunch of cops with some cocaine. Who knows what was in my tip jar by that point? Mm. I pulled a slick one on them, though. I did pull a slick one. I'll never forget. That constable come back out. They're standing on the other side of the bar. And she's asking me to, of course, break down the register and give her all the money from the register. So I'm doing that. I'm trying to think the whole time about what to do about what might be in that tip jar. While I'm counting up the register, she goes, I hate to inform you of this. We're going to take your tips too. Like, those are mine. Those ain't the bars. She's like, yeah, we need accounting for every bit of money we take out of this place. I'm like, my God, now what am I going to do? I mean, I guess I can just dump it out and go, I didn't know customers put that in there. But then are they going to look harder at me? I'm counting that register out. I'm trying to come up with a plan. And the constable has walked back out to his car to go answer the radio. And she's standing there. And I remember we had a cigarette machine in the bathroom. And I said, well, I said, if you're going to take everything, you're going to go need to, they hit that cigarette machine pretty hard. So you're going to go need to unlock that and do an accounting of that. She had her little thing she was doing all the accounting on. And she goes, oh, okay. I said, here's the key if you want to do that. And I'll finish counting the register out and put it out here. I said, you don't have to worry. We've got cameras and everything. She was really cool. She was like, yeah, I'll go. And she walked off the bathroom. The minute she got out of sight, boy, I dumped that tip jar on the table, and anything that didn't look like money, I just split it off the bar and throwed it in the trash can. There was a little trash can right there, just right in that trash, and then threw a couple bottles on top of it. She come back. I said, "Oh, you said you got to take the tip jar too," so I went in and dumped that out. And she, of course, thanked me for being cooperative. I was mad as hell though, because that was my tip money. Anyway, they cleaned that place out. They took every dime out of that place that they could find. And we walked outside. They put a big lock on the door and locked it and told me to have my boss contact him. True to fashion, Mike was a hustler. 2 days later, we were back open and going. Of course, Mike gave me a little bump for my tip money and stuff and took care of me. He was a good dude. You know, we can all get behind on our taxes sometimes. It doesn't make you a bad person. Well, we had some rowdy ass times in that joint. I was in there at night at Rita and Katrina. Uh, I had a buddy. I've told y'all a little bit about him a couple times. A guy named Nick Aludo that I ran around with. He was in my class of comedy. We started out together. Not everybody liked Nick. I liked Nick. Me and Nick got along just fine. He could be a pain in the ass, but he was a good dude. And he put me on every show he booked. He always wanted me to come do shows with him and stuff. And me and his wife were friends. We all hung out and did a, did a lot of party drugs together and stuff, hanging out. They had a They had a place in Houston House, this old apartment complex in downtown where Sam Kinison and Bill Hicks and all those guys lived at one point. And they had an apartment up on the 17th floor of Houston House. And we used to hang out on that balcony all night, and party down. Nick was from New Jersey. His dad was Nick Senior, and Nick Senior owned some bars. I don't remember what they were called. They were up and down Highway 6, and I can't remember the life of me what that bar was called. But anytime one of them got closed down, he just called the new one such and such bar number two, neighborhood bar number two, or something like that. And he had a thick East Coast accent. But from the story, I don't know the whole story, but supposedly Nick Senior got in some trouble in New Jersey with some guys. I don't know if it was the Sopranos, but that kind of trouble on some betting and stuff. And he had to go to Texas and start his life over. So that's why he was in Houston. I always got along with Nick Senior. I would do shows at his bars and stuff. Me and Steve Hurst, and and Nick's uncle, his dad's brother, was a guy named Frank Aludo that owned a place called BFE Rock Club. If you're familiar with the Houston music scene, you know all about BFE Rock Club on Jones Road, right down the road from Crooked Ferret. Still going strong, I think. I hadn't seen Frank in many years. Done some shows over there with him. We have a lot of mutual friends and acquaintances. I'm not sure Frank would know me if he saw me on the street, but I performed at his place quite a number of times. But Nick Jr. Nick's one of those guys. He always had a plan. He always had some hustle or something he was going on. He was selling credit card processing machines, and he was just always hustling. He was always you couldn't have a conversation with him without him telling you about something that he was hustling towards or working at. And I think his old man was kind of the same way. They all had their hands in all sort of pies. And after I sold that Toyota, I had a little money in my pocket, and Nick goes, "Hey man, I know you've been looking for a car." He said, "I got this car that me and Becca used to have, but it's jacked up. You probably have to put an engine in it, but you can just have it." I said, "What kind of car is it?" He said it's like a '99 Ford Contour. He said it's over at one of my dad's impound lots, storage lot. Well, I don't know what it was. I said, "Hell, man, let's go take a look at it, see if it's worth screwing with." I don't know anything about no Ford Contour. I don't know anything about the car. We rode over in his little Honda, met his dad over at the storage lot, and there's this old, nothing special, just Ford Contour. It was a sport model, had a little spoiler, little V6 car. Nothing. It kind of reminded me of a Ford Taurus a little bit. If it was like a little like a smaller Ford Taurus. Now they made a performance, but they made a SVT version that was supposedly it has a cult following now. And then they had another version called the Mondeo, and I don't know if that's the Mercury version or the overseas version, but it also very popular. Mine was not the popular version. It was just your run of the mill old Ford Contour. Those are the kind of cars comics need. Ones that let you stay under the radar. Look like a little old family sedan. That's all it was. A little 4-door car. We went over there and looked at it today. A battery was dead on it. And uh, Nick Sr. had a jump box. He said, "We can jump it off so you can hear what it's doing." And Nick didn't know a lot about cars. He'd been driving it when it started acting up on him and his wife. And sure enough, boy, I mean, we got it fired up, and it sounded awful. Sounded sounded real bad, you know. Like, and they kept saying it was a rod knock, but I wasn't hearing. I mean, I've done some things. I wasn't hearing a rod knock. I was hearing the hardest pre-ignition detonation I'd ever heard in my life. This was the point. It almost sounded like rod slap or something, but it wasn't like a rod knock's usually pretty rhythmic. It stays on. It's the same rod. Dun, 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 dun. And this was dun, 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 dun. It was all. It was real erratic. I remember I called my dad. I went back to my. I went back and I called my dad. And I said, I don't think this thing has a rod knock. It's doing all kind of. It sounds like it's developing individual rod knocks all there. He goes, that sounds like detonation. I said, yeah, but it's so loud, you know. He said, well, worst case scenario, he said, if you're gonna get the car for free, it's got clean title and everything, you know, why don't you call the junkyard to see what an engine costs for it? And sure enough, I called around a couple of it. I think it was 2.5 V6, and several junkyards had an engine for it, and they weren't super bad priced. And 400 or 500 bucks, I could throw an engine in this thing, used engine. I tried to drive; it would pull itself, or you know, transmission was acting all right. Inside the car was pretty clean. I mean, they had kind of trashed it out a little bit, and it had been sitting at storage a lot, but it just needs some cleaning. And the outside of the car was straight; it had no dents or anything like that on it. It was pretty, you know, straight old car for free. It was buddy deal, you know. So I called Nick. I was like, "Yeah, man, I'd really like to have that car if you don't mind signing it over to me and everything. I'll fix it up." And sure enough, so Nick, you know, Nick jumped on board. He said, "Yeah, man, I hope it turned out to be a good car for you. That's what I'd like to see." And yeah, and then I paid. I had several buddies that drive wreckers and stuff. I called one of my old wrecker buddies and threw him some cash. Go pick it up and take it over to my dad's house. I didn't have my apartment. I didn't have a place to work on it. He drug it out there to my parents' house and got it out there. And my dad's one of the best diagnostic guys I've ever met in my life. My dad's sharp. He can figure some he can figure some stuff out, man. Get out there, and of course I immediately went and bought a battery for it, put a new battery on it, and fired it up for dad. And he heard it, just all that. He goes, boy, that ain't like nothing I ever heard in my life. I don't make no damn sense. I said, no, it don't to me either. Well, on top of the engine is big old plastic cover. You know, these later model cars, they started doing big old plastic cover covering up the whole engine. He said, I want to see if I can hear it better. He said, why don't you take all them plastic covers off? I'll go get a broomstick. And he, you know, it's an old trick. Take a little shortened piece of broomstick, stick it up against the block of the engine, stick it up against your ear. You can hear rod knock or main bearing. You can hear stuff better. It'll work kind of like a stethoscope, a hillbilly stethoscope, if you will. Boy, dadgum skeeters. So he ran off in the garage to do something. I started popping those plastic covers off the top of that engine. Sure enough, I popped that main plastic cover off the engine. The whole wiring harness on top of the engine is melted. It's all melted together, and you can tell it's been shorting out. There's black marks everywhere, and it's just a melty mess. So I hollered at. I was like, "Dad, come check this out." And he come out there and took a look at it. He goes, "Well, that explains a whole lot." He said if that thing's shorting out and doing all kind of, you make that engine do all kind of wild stuff, all the electronic timing and everything. I said, man, I bet I can get a wiring harness for it. He's like, yeah, yeah, we'll just, I think that was a Friday. He said, Saturday morning, we'll get up and go hit the wrecking yard and see what we can find. Sure. So Saturday morning, I get up them yellow pages, you know, just like you do, like you did back in. Called all the local pull it. They live kind of out in Rosenberg, Richmond. They live out in Richmond and off Highway 99. Used to be old prison road. Called them up, and there used to be a place out there called Lane's Used Auto Parts. Lane's Used Auto Parts in Rosenberg. That man had everything. He was a lifeline for sure. Lane's Used Auto Parts, always good for parts for just about anything. I've been buying parts from him for a long time. Sure enough, I called over there. I said, "Man, you got any?" I got a Ford Contour, and anything from this little era will fit it. I'm looking for a wiring harness off the top of the engine. He said, "Yeah, you'll have to pull it yourself, but I got a couple of them cars out here." We drove out there and said, wiring harness is a pain in the ass to remove. So we spent some time, and we had already that day before we had already pulled the one off the Contour, loosened it and everything to see how to take it off. And so we already had the tools we need and everything we needed for the clips. And me and the old man worked at it. We got it all loose. Had to unhook it from up in the dash and pull it through. It was a lot of work. Good couple of hours out there in Texas heat pulling this wiring harness. And we go back to the house. Of course, we spent another couple of hours the next day, 2 or 3 hours, hooking that new wiring harness up, putting it in there. Get that final clip in, kind of do an idiot check up and down the wiring harness, make sure everything's connected. He said, "Well, it's now or never." Boy, I turned that key and that little V6 fired up, no knocking. Just it ran rough because they got to relearn. The ECM's got to relearn. Ran rough about 15, 20 minutes, kind of like it was missing a little bit, and then it just sort of evened out and just boom, low quiet V6. Heard of life right there. I think that wiring harness cost me $65. So for the cost of a tow and $65, I got a car, baby. Woo! I didn't tell Nick that because I didn't want him feeling some kind of wait, boy, I'm gonna get this booger eventually. Yeah, $65 and the cost of a tow, man, about $150 in this car. Of course, I took it down to the car wash, cleaned the piss out of it, cleaned the inside of it real good, washed it down. Went and got some plates put on it, got it inspected. It was had me a little mom mobile, man. Didn't do bad on gas. It was a pretty good little old car, in the beginning. Somewhere in this time period, I started dating this gal named Jessica. I don't remember her last name. She was this liberal vegan chick. She was a liberal vegan that worked for Landry's, which I thought was hilarious. Like you work for one of the worst corporations in this town. Like you literally work for the mafia. You're a liberal vegan. This is hilarious. But we were having fun. We were running around together. I met her up at the tavern one night or something, and things just sort of went from there. I was staying at her house some. It wasn't like a serious relationship. We are just kind of having fun. I'd go run around with her and her friends every once in a while. We'd go, man, there's a couple places. We used to go to Lizard's Pub, LZ Lounge. Just young and dumb and having fun, that kind of stuff. And it's just fun. It was like casual, where nobody's making no promises to one another. Just two young people having a good time and enjoying their sexuality and whatnot. She's all right, girl. Of course, I'm still partying, doing all the things I'm doing. So a lot of nights I ain't with her. I'm out doing my thing, and that's right around the time I got arrested. Me and my brother, let's see, Shelly from the Hyundai accident store. Shelly and Thomas had this big place up Conroe. We called it Camp Conroe. And we'd go up there and hang out on the weekends, barbecue and party and drink beer. have a good time, you know. Just like a big old compound. They had a big old piece of land out there and cut and shoot, and we go out there and have us a time. And my parents are out of town or something, and me and Joey decided to go. We was gonna go up and hang out at Camp Conroe for the weekend. We were in Joey's Jetta. Yeah, I'm sure I've already told you that. Long story short, I got arrested for having a little MJ and got busted up by the Conroe PD. Mm. Well, them guys knocked me around pretty good. Still don't like them dudes. That's a Nurse Mike saved me again on that one. So Nurse Mike was also going to school to be. He had just finished school as a lawyer. He got his law degree and was doing some lawyering. He's an ambitious dude. Guy wore a lot of hats. And well, Nurse Mike, boy, he went to court, fought for my freedom. Of course, the old liberal vegan girl didn't like it. I was, getting put in jail and stuff. I offended her sensibilities. Life was moving fast then. It was just every day was a freaking adventure. I was working at the comedy club with some really big names all the time. I was just living. I was like it's that old Eagle song, "Life in the Fast Lane, gonna make you lose your mind." I mean, it was that. It was just that song for like a whole year. Just that song on repeat. Just get up, do it again. And like I said, it gets dangerous when you're functional on that stuff because then you can just keep doing it. Ain't no problem. I was bartending at the Late Night Pie when Katrina happened and wiped out New Orleans. Of course, it freaked everybody in Houston out, and we got overrun with a bunch of folks coming from New Orleans looking for help. And Houston got a little wild there. And then it wasn't too long after Katrina, another big old storm shows up in the Gulf. They named Rita. I was bartending at the Late Night Pie the night Rita come in. That they had done freaked everybody out in Houston. Rita's coming to Houston. It's going to take out Houston. Everybody in Houston simultaneously jumped in their car and decided to leave at the same time. If you're around back then, you know what happened. They all got stuck on the highway and traffic back up for miles. Nobody got to back. People literally sat in the same place on the highway for 12, 15 hours. People were running out of gas. I think some people died. It was bad. It was one of the worst evacuations in human history. It made Pompeii look orderly. It was so bad. And we knew we couldn't get out of downtown Houston. We were stuck. So I was just bartending, because my customers were like, yeah, we'll just see what happens. But literally we had one friend leave to go to Austin and another friend get on a plane to go to Japan that same day. And our friend got to Japan faster than the people that left to go to Austin got to Austin. I mean, it was bad. That Rach evacuated. She went back out to West Texas. Her mom. People were scared. Katrina was a god awful situation, and if you've read any of the stories from it, know anything about it, it was just horrid. People were paranoid, freaked out. I think it came in late that night when it came in, and it actually ended up going up through like Beaumont and everything, and it just wrecked that Sabine Pass and all that area. Didn't really do much Houston. The biggest damage Houston had was all these people stuck on the highway and nobody knowing what to do about it. Just traffic jams for miles. And me and my customers sat up there at the Late Night Pie. We floated a keg of Lone Star that night because I just kept serving. Boy, it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. There wasn't going to be no TABC messing with us. They had bigger problems. Boy, we just kept rocking and rolling until we emptied that Lone Star keg. We had us a time that night. I think I still don't like Lone Star because of that. Boy, that headache must. I think that headache lasted long enough for everybody to get home from the evacuation. Of course, I'm still hanging around with Pete, the owner of the Laugh Stop. He's still every bit the nightmare he always was. He's getting worse. His drinking's really getting out of hand. I'm along for the party, so I don't care. I ain't trying to tell the man what to do, you know. He calls me up one night. So they had the Laugh Stop, but then they started booking this casino in Louisiana called La Berge de Lac. And this is one of the nights I really got fed up with Pete. He's like, man, he said, I got Godfrey headlining La Berge de Lac. I'm gonna have you open for him. We're gonna ride out there together. We hop in his Tahoe and run out there. I think it was in Lake Charles. In the Jack Daniels tap room or something like that, the Jack Daniels grill is a horrible environment for comedy. People are there trying to drink, eat food, and have a good time. Casinos are not great environments for comedy unless they have a dedicated comedy show room. But trying to do it while there's other stuff going on and bar noise and everything, it makes stand up comedy a battle. It's not a good environment for it. We did. We loaded up Pete's Tahoe. We headed out to Lake Charles. Of course, Pete, he starts hammering drinks. They're giving him free drinks because he's booking the bar, and he starts hammering drinks, and I go up there and do my little bit of shit, and it's a nightmare. The crowd don't want any part of it. It's like somebody sprang a comedy show on them on surprise, and they were just there to drink and have a good time. Guerrilla comedy, if you will, if you will. Oh, Godfrey's a tremendous comic and tremendous talent. And he goes up there and does way better than me because he's got a lot more skill than me at that time. Me and Godfrey hang out and talk a little bit. Of course, Pete's getting worse. He's like, all right, man, we're gonna get out of here. And I'm like, all right, we're both jacked up by that point. I don't know how much shit he hit in that Tahoe on the way back from Lake Charles that night, but I do know that at some point, about 2 miles from his condo, we ended up in about a 6 foot drainage ditch. And basically just got out, called a wrecker to come get it, and then we walked all the way back to his condo because he didn't want to get caught driving under the influence. They hauled it off to a shop to fix it. Transmission was messed up. He found some little transmission shop close to the club to fix it. And I kind of spun out away from him for a little bit because that night, man, I was like, man, we could have got us killed or any other kind of thing. And it just, sometimes dudes show you how scary they really can be. You're like, dude, you're gonna end up in a box. I mean, we all are, but you're gonna get there quicker than us. I remember I stayed at his condo at night. He had these he had these two big old dumb labs, Bailey and Boomer, but he had this parrot named Benny. And this freaking parrot could make doorbell sounds. And this parrot loved antagonizing the dog. It was the worst shit in the world. It was like staying in a zoo. I still don't like birds on account of that parrot. That damn Benny. I thought about cooking Benny so many times. Well, what's chicken fried parrot taste like? I was about ready to try it a couple mornings. Of course, I still hang around the club. I'd see Pete at night and stuff. We'd talk. But I was doing a lot of road gigs too, in those times. I would bartend during the week at Late Night Pie. And I also picked up another gig. I was bartending during the day at this place called the Kentucky over off, hell, I don't remember where it was. Doesn't matter. Fountain View, something like that. Fountain View, Westheimer area, Fountain View, Richmond. I was getting the worst road gigs. drive to Delville, Alabama, and stand up in front of a giant TV screen showing the NBA finals and do stand up for a bunch of people who don't care about it. That kind of shit, you know. Gigs where you barely made enough money to cover your gas to get back. You were just doing it at that point to do it and get better at the job. It's like an internship, you know. I remember I was coming back from that Alabama run. I was geeked out of my mind, I'm sure. It's the way I rolled in those days. I was coming back from my Alabama run. I was on I-10 when the transmission started going out on the contour. Here we go again. I got terrible luck with automatic transmissions. Me and automatic transmissions do not see eye to eye. Sure enough, old contour transmission starts giving me grief. Here we go again. Another transmission going out on OJ Dub. Yeah, I know the next time it had like first and second gear. I think it lost third or fourth or something like that, but it was slipping real bad. You could smell transmission fluid. I was like, well, this car's cooked. Had a cheap car for a little while. Of course, the rest of that week I was working over at the lab stop. I think I was featuring for Vic Henley again. Man, I was working with Vic Henley or Robert Kelly, one of them two. You know, somebody I got along with good, and I was excited about the week. Of course, the next night at the club, I was telling Pete about the car, and man, I got a good transmission guy. Boom, I got a transmission guy. Did the transmission on Tahoe, man. Did a good job. I was like, yeah, I've heard that before. I don't trust any transmission guys. As far as I'm concerned, they all go to hell. He said, no, this guy's good. It's good. It's right over here on Washington. So next day we go over this little A+ transmission on Washington. Pete introduced me to David Doyle. David's a cool dude. Big old blonde headed fella. Come out there, he looks at the car. Oh, it's AOD. Yeah. He said, we'll tear it down. We'll figure out what's going to cost to get it back together. I hang out with him a little bit there, you know. He said, yeah. He said, yeah, I'll call you in a day or two, tell you what we're looking at. Said, all right, boom. So I got my stuff out of there and my merchandise. And Pete gave me a ride back to the club. I think I stayed with Jessica a couple nights and stayed at Pete's house a couple nights and argued with him all night. And sure enough, David calls back, says, hey, man, give me about $1,200-1,500 to rebuild the transmission. Stuff is cheaper then. Boy, that's about every dime I got. You know, all I had was about $500 or $600, but I had a good $600 coming to me for working at the laugh stop. It's like, well, I might pick up some extra shifts at my bartending gigs. And Pete was like, man, I got some work needs done around the club. You can do that too. I was already doing that kind of work for him. Cool, man. I told David, go ahead, man. Go ahead, rebuild her, you know. Good little car. David said the funniest thing in the world to me. It sticks with me to this day. David's a good salesman. I said, man, $1,200, bro. Can I just go get a used transmission? Could you put a used transmission in it? He goes, well, it's already got a used transmission in it. How much good is that doing you? Yeah, I ain't put a used transmission in nothing since that day. So Dave's working on transmission. I'm working at the club. Like I said, run around with the gal. He calls me a week later. Car's ready to go. Man, I'm happy. I go pick it up. Of course, I chit chat bullshit with David a little bit. He's a cool guy. He's done come out and see me do comedy a couple times because he found out I was a comedian. Him and his girl are into that. They came from Austin. They like going out to live music, live shows. So we got a little bit of a friendship burgeoning there, you know. I didn't think I was ever going to see him again. I picked my car up, thought I was done, you know. And life just sort of settled back into the fast lane, you know. I had to make that money back, so I was bartending every shift I could get, picking up every crappy gig I could get, and every shitty bar gig in Houston I could pick up, and every little shift and whatever I could pick up at the last stop, trying to make that money back up, times so I could pay my rent, whatnot. You know, those times where you just hustling, hustling, hustling all the time just to get through to tomorrow. That's all I was doing. Slinging a little booger sugar at night to the other comics who were too scared to go get it themselves. There was a mess of them. Man, Jessica broke up with me like right after that. Yeah. Uh, I don't even remember what happened. I said something that I know what happened. Uh, Sorry, I couldn't remember. She had a bunch of family down in like League City or Kemah or something like that. And they were having like a big family get together barbecue type thing. And she invited me. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll go. We'll go have a good time and everything. Well, then, like right before the event, she disinvited me. I don't know if I want my family to meet you. Kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, what are you trying to say about me? Some kind of derelict? Ain't worthy of the Kemah people? And I did the typical dickhead dude thing. Like, well, shit, I ain't gonna go meet your dumb family anyways. I'd rather take these shifts and make my money. And of course, she got pissed at me and she goes, well, I don't see any point in continuing this and whatever. Yeah, it's not like we were in love or whatever. I remember she showed up at the late night pie like 3 or 4 nights later, though. Hey, I'm really sorry about the way I acted the other day. It just rubbed me the wrong way when you were being rude. I said, well, it rubbed me the wrong way when all of a sudden you decided I wasn't good enough to meet your family and kind of made me feel some kind of way. And she goes, well, they're just very da da da. I was like, I don't. It was you. You're the one. Why'd you invite me to begin with? It's not like they suddenly became the way they were. And I left it at that. I told her, I was like, I'm not interested. You know, it's better if you just go on and find somebody else, and I'll go on and do my thing. Getting in the way of my good time, anyways. Boy, you know something? That little old Jessica, the vegan, went to that barbecue, met a dude, ate meat again for the first time, ate a hamburger, decided she wasn't a vegan anymore, and ended up marrying that dude like 4 or 5 months later. And as far as I know, they're probably still married. Like, boy, you don't ever want to be the turning point in somebody's life. I was literally, she was like, this is the bottom of the barrel. It can only get better from here. And then made some changes and fixed her life. You don't ever want to be the bottom of somebody's barrel. I was a turning point for old Jessica. Made me have to take a long, hard look at myself, boy, but I was still partying and having a good time. I can give a damn. Of course, I still kind of had the hots for Rachel, but she had her life going on, and I wasn't part of that at that moment. My buddy Billy D called me up, said, "Man, I got a gig for you up in Shreveport at the Funny Bone." No, it was Slade Ham. Slade Ham gave me that gig up at the Funny Bone, Shreveport. I went up there and featured for old Steve McGrew, I think. No, it wasn't Steve McGrew. It was Ricky Gutierrez. It was Ricky Gutierrez. God, that dude was a pain in the ass. Boy, you want to meet a rude son of a bitch in this business? That guy. I mean, we got along okay, but boy, I ain't never met anybody that loves Ricky Gutierrez as much as Ricky Gutierrez loves Ricky Gutierrez. That dude, oof, that's one of the biggest egos I've ever been in the room with. That guy, something else. It was kind of a miserable week working with him. up my ass all week, telling me about how great he was and everything I was doing wrong. And driving home from Shreveport at the end of the week, there goes the transmission again. Freewheeling some gear or something slipping. Damn. I wasn't a paperwork guy then. I didn't know if it had a warranty. I just called David up the next day and said, "Hey man, the transmission went out. It's only been a couple weeks. Transmission went back out in the contour." He said, "How many miles you put on?" I said, "Man, maybe 600." I went to Shreveport and back. On the way back to Shreveport, started acting up. He said, "Did it overheat?" No, it didn't overheat. Car runs fine. All right, bring it. I'll send a wrecker over, pick it up. I said, "What's the drive, boy? I'll drive it over there." "No, I don't want you to do any more damage to it. I'll send a wrecker, pick it up." So he had his wrecker come pick it up. And of course, I don't hear from him for another day or two. And he called me back. He said, "Yeah." He said, "We're putting it back together. So the gizmo sprag glit socket failed or whatever the shit. I don't know. I know less about an automatic transmission than I do just about anything." Yeah, he said, "We're going to get it back together for you, everything." So sure enough, 4 or 5 days later, man, car's back together. Just in time too, because I got a run booked. I'm excited about, man. I had met this comic in Houston, this guy named Billy Wayne Davis, and we had become fast friends. We were buddies right off the bat. I had booked him in some shows in Houston, and in return, he helped me book some shows in Tennessee. I was going to come up and do a big theater in Crossville, Tennessee with him. And then I was going to go to Jackson. That's my spot. Go to Jackson, Tennessee. And then I was doing a show in Memphis. I had a real run in Tennessee there. I was real excited. I love Tennessee's one of my favorite places to go do stand up. That Jackson club that being South Street Comedy back in the day, that was my favorite club in the country outside of the Laugh Stop. I love that place. Excited, man. Prep for it like I prepped for it. I was laughing when I got in my car to go to Granbury, uh, because I made sure I put some extra strength Tylenol in my pocket because my hip bothers me a little bit after driving too long. That's a L5S1 back and everything. I said, "Boy, times have changed," because I was thinking about that contour. I used to prep to go a road trip back then. Prep for a road trip back then meant an 8 ball because I didn't know where to get none of that stuff in Tennessee. You had to leave stocked. Well, those are some drives. I mean, I'm telling you, I left Houston. I don't know, midnight, and pulled into Crossville, Tennessee about 10 in the morning, 9, 10 in the morning. Of course, been going all night. Pupils were probably the size of a pinhead. Hook up Billy Wayne. Of course, he got a place where I can go crash before we do the show. And ain't no crashing going on. I just stayed awake all day, drinking coffee and stuff. Whew. These are wild times, bub. We're living hard. We do that show at night in Crossville. We go party in Crossville, a bunch of Billy's friends. Next day, I drive on to Jackson. I do shows in Jackson. Then I get done in Jackson. I go do a Sunday night in Memphis, boy. I didn't have enough money for a hotel room in Memphis, at least not one I was going to stay in. Memphis has some sketch rooms, but I wasn't going to one of them. And so I just drive on back to Houston. And this back in the days when I had the ostrich skin suit, the white snake skin boots. Boy, I was something else, Bubba. I always imagine what happened if a cop had pulled me over wearing that get up, geeked out of my damn mind driving back to Houston that night. Boy, they'd have put me underneath the jail. Sure enough, about 45 minutes outside of Houston, that transmission takes a shit again. The contour Contrary, this time the damn thing won't move. It's done. I call a friend, get a ride, go stay at a friend's house in town. I think Nick, maybe go stay at Nick's house and call David next day. Hey, Bo. The whole reason me and David David is one of my closest friends to this day. He's in my wedding because this damn contour, this transmission kept going out. This contour, I had to keep talking to him. He said, "Damn, man." He's perplexed. David's one of the best transmission builders I ever met in my life. He has built some units over the years that have never had a problem. Like this was wild, but he wasn't building this one. He was having one of his builders do it. He said, "Man, he sends a wrecker out, brings the thing back, takes it apart again. Of course, whatever he finds when he takes it apart this time, he decides he fires his builder over it. I remember that. He fired his builder over whatever he found when he took it apart that time. He was hot. Told me about it. And I don't remember the exact. He gets it all back together again. I start driving it again, and it's right around this time. It's right around this time. My uncle Stanley, my dad's oldest brother, my uncle Stanley, is autistic. I mean, they said he fell out of a truck when he was like 2 years old. He didn't talk till he was like five. But knowing what I know now and knowing what I know about my son, it's the exact same behavior and stuff. But it's my Meemaw didn't ever want to accept there was anything wrong with one of her babies. And so she wouldn't ever let them do no testing on it or what little testing they did in the 50s. She wouldn't let them do any of that on them. And Uncle Stanley grew up very codependent on his parents. But he was good at say he built beautiful models. He was he I have a 22 Remington rifle he gave my dad for my dad's 16th birthday because Uncle Stanley always had a job. He could always take care of himself. He lived behind my Meemaw and Papa's house. He lived in a little trailer house on a piece of land that my great grandmother and grandfather owned. Bartons, Joe and Buford and Susie Barton, my great grandparents on my Meemaw side, and they had a little yard backed up to my Meemaw and Papa's piece of land, and right there off 31, they had some pecan trees and nice little spot there. And as they passed on, Uncle Stanley ended up at their house. He lived in an old trailer house they had on that property. Before the trailer house, they used to have they lived in an old Baptist church. Somebody had this old Baptist church that they had decided to move. And Buford was a traveling Baptist preacher when he was younger. And he somehow got this little church house. And he made him and my great grandmother a house out of it. They lived in this little old Baptist A-frame church for a little while on that piece of property. I don't know where the trailer house come from. I don't know all the details, but at some point there was a little trailer house there and a little shed out back. That's where Uncle Stanley lived in that little trailer house. And people in town called him Dummy, and my papa called him Dummy, and people didn't treat him much respect. My dad had helped him get a job at a machine shop. He worked at the same machine shop forever, but he turned out beautiful parts. He was a good machinist. I think about Uncle Stanley a lot when I'm dealing with my youngest boy. Some of their behavior. Uncle Stanley didn't like to be hugged or touched. You had to just kind of put your arm around him and he would lean up against you, and that was a hug for Uncle Stanley. He'd repeat himself all the time. He'd say, no, he would do this. It would drive his brothers. My dad had, brothers and sister, four brothers and a sister, and Uncle Stanley would drive them crazy because they'd be sitting around having a conversation. My dad'd say, boy, I went down to the Chevrolet house the other day, look at them new trucks. And Uncle Stanley go, nuh-uh. And my dad like, yeah, I did. Like, I don't know why they kept falling for it. For 40 years, they fell for this same bit Uncle Stanley was doing. Yes, Stanley, I went over there yesterday. Uh-uh. It didn't matter what my dad said. My dad would be red in the face, pissed off, and Stanley just, uh-uh. Just sit there and screw with him. I always enjoyed that. Uncle Stanley was funny, man. One time we was all sitting in at Aunt Barbara's house one time. Aunt Barbara made this big old strawberry cake, and Uncle Stanley, boy, he had some impulse control problems because he just standing there. All of a sudden, he just jammed his thumb right down the middle of that cake and brought it out. My Aunt Barbara lost her mind. Stanley, what are you doing? Are you crazy? But Uncle Stanley, after me, mom, and papa died, he didn't have anybody to take care of him. And my dad, we lived in Houston. My dad would get frustrated because he didn't feel like his brothers and sisters looked out for him enough. And I don't think that's true. I think he was just frustrated because he couldn't do anything about the situation as much as he wanted to. But he got a hair up his ass one day. My dad decided to go up, drive up to Kilgore to check on Stanley. He went over to Stanley's house, finally got Stanley to let him in the house. And that's the part I forgot to. After Meemaw died, after Meemaw or Papa died, I don't remember which one. Uncle Stanley lost his job. He just started churning out crap parts, and he couldn't keep up anymore. He was devastated. His whole universe disappeared. But luckily, they got some money from Meemaw, got in that wreck and everything. So Stanley, he had some money. But he didn't have a job anymore. He didn't have a purpose anymore. And we've talked before how that sometimes ruins people. I think, especially with a neurodivergent mind, it's not helpful. My dad went up there to check on him. He got in the trailer house, and Uncle Stanley's floor in the trailer house, the sheathing had all rotted and was like falling through cross members, and there was big holes in the floor, like literally to under the house and stuff. The man was not living in a good situation. And Dad comes home and sensed, I got to do something about this. So, well, Dad tells me, he says, I want you to call Joey up, and I want to see if you two would go with me and help me rebuild that floor in this trailer house. And yeah, man. So I called Joey, and of course Joey's game. He's like, oh yeah, let's go up there for the weekend, hang out in Kilgore, and work on Uncle Stanley's house. Joey was always down. He's a good help. We get up there, and Dad orders a bunch of 3/4 inch plywood, and we took his saws and his table saw and all that good stuff. We packed everything we could in those cars and the contour and everything, and we went up there, and we worked on that trailer house all weekend. We put new plywood flooring all through the trailer house, and we was going to come back in a couple of weeks and put some new linoleum down on top of it for him. But we redid the whole floor of that trailer, all through the kitchen and everything. We worked our butts off on that thing. If we come back to Houston, go back to our lives and doing stuff we got to do, and of course, Dad's got work and all that kind of thing. And about a week or two later, my dad Tries to call Stanley one day. Stanley don't answer. He tries not to panic too much of it. He calls my Aunt Linda. He says, "Hey, I called Stanley's house. She's not answering the phone." She's like, "Oh, he just does that sometimes." He called Uncle Larry. Well, Stanley ain't answering the phone. Oh, he just does that sometimes. They were around him all the time. It's a different. My dad was panicking a little bit. He said, "I think something's wrong." He said, next day, he tried to call Stanley. Stanley didn't answer the phone. Day after that, he tries to call Stanley. Stanley doesn't answer the phone. Of course, it's the weekend. He can get off work. First thing my dad does when he gets off work that Friday night is hop in his car and head up 4 hours up to Kilgore to go check on his brother. He's told me a couple times how awful it was. But what the medical examiner thought happened is Uncle Stanley got out of the shower and wasn't feeling good. A lot of people, a lot of people have heart attacks after hot showers. That's like a pretty common thing. Because he was still wrapped up in his towel, and he went and sat down on his recliner, and he had a heart attack and died right there in his recliner. But he had sat there for 3 or 4 days before Dad found him. My father is not the same person now as he was before that happened. I don't reckon you could be. If I found Joey like that, I'd be destroyed. You know. All I remember, I had to. I think my mom called me. I was at the laugh. I just got done with the show, or mom called me. Of course, we had to go up to Kilgore, do the funeral, and it was just bad and sad. Just those things are. You know, I've said it before. You get a certain age, people start dying off. I was watching my dad lose his brother. He's lost all his brothers now. It's just him left. Him and his sister. He's had to bury every one of his brothers. Even his youngest brother, I don't seem right. Um, yeah, I ain't gonna say too much more about that. Uncle Stanley. It just sucked because we just done this thing for him, trying to make his life better, and then he just didn't even live long enough to get to enjoy any of it. Only say all this to say that on the way back from that funeral, guess what happens? Can you guess? Can you guess? Transmission goes out in the dead gum contour again on the way back to Houston from that trip. Now David's pissed. What is going on? This car costing him money now. He's done lost every dime he's made in this car that is still under warranty. He's hot. He's like, I'm building this one my damn self. And sure enough, man, of course, David is very sharp, man. He starts taking that transmission apart, and he starts. I don't know how he figured it out, but he calls me. He's excited. He calls me. He goes, "I figured out what it is." I said, "What is it?" He said, "The case is warped." He said, "We kept rebuilding this thing in the same case." He said, "This case is warped, and that's why we're losing fluid pressure in the valve body and stuff. That's why it keeps." Because he would never find a lot wrong with it when he went in there. It was just always a valve body failure at that point. Sure enough, he orders a junk core from a junkyard, wrecking yard, and rebuilds that transmission. Never have another problem with that transmission ever again in life. Primo perfect after that. That damn warped AOD case. I still hate AOD because that Contour and that old Ford F-150 I have. Boy, he just that warped case was making that thing leak and do all kind of crazy shit. I was happy I had a car again finally. That was it never, I was always worried it was gonna go out on me again, but it never did again after that. That's right after I mean, this is when I really get out of hand. I was doing some shows with Ralphie May and Ralphie played a fun trick on me one night. Yeah, every headliner, every person you work with out there on the road, they all got their own preferences and their own things. Ralphie hated cocaine and the pill poppers and all that stuff. He didn't want that crap around him. He didn't like people get too drunk or he just didn't want that crap around him. Back then, he was a weed guy. Ralphie liked weed. If you smoke weed, like mushrooms, he's 100% on board with it. But you smoking cigarettes, and he just didn't want that shit around his show or on his show. You know, he's running his own show. That's the way it was. You play by the rules, don't play by the rules. If you don't play by the rules, you're probably gonna lose your job. And when I went to Dallas with him that time, we were that particular time we did the second show Saturday night and hang out in the green room. Ralphie's like, "Hey, one of my fans gave me some mushrooms. You want to chew up some mushrooms, Jeremy?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I like mushrooms." Chewed up these mushrooms, sitting there bullshitting. And all of a sudden, Ralphie looks at me with this weird grin on his face. He goes, "You ready for the third show?" Excuse me? He said, "Yeah, they do a late show here. It's a third show. We sold another show out." Bro, that walk to the stage, it was one of the worst walks of my life. I was already seeing all the colors were getting really spectacular by the time I got to that stage. I didn't even know what to, I was only doing like 10 minutes, so I didn't know what to do. I just told the crowd the truth about what had just happened. Of course, that late night crowd loved it. They lost their mind. And everything I said after that was funny to them, but I know it wasn't making any sense. I was just telling them, like, look at you, bro. Like, I was just whacked out of my gourd for 10 minutes till they lit me. And I just basically introduced the next act, ran off the stage. Ralphie's cackling in the back of the room the whole time. I didn't talk to him the rest of the night. Got my money. Like, damn. That was cold blooded, man. I'd go to my hotel room. Boy, I was hot. Didn't matter though, because I had another show I was supposed to go do with Ralphie, and he called me. He said that he was taking me off the show, and I said, "Why?" And he said, "I think you know why." And I kind of had an inkling. I had hit up the bartender in Dallas, see if he had any blow, and gossipy bitches in comedy clubs. Somebody else that liked working with Ralphie a lot went and told Ralphie about it. And we didn't talk for a long time after that, for a real long time. In fact, it was about 4 or 5 years before me and Ralphie spoke again. And we had it out over that very specific situation. And I said, "Well, you claim, we were friends and stuff. You could have talked to me about it, told me, but that's not what you did. You just cut me off." But I can't blame him. He had a lot to protect. I get it. It just it felt kind of hypocritical to me at the time. Doesn't matter. We got past it. I love that booger. I miss him every day, all the time. I think about him. Miss him. But I was getting bad. When you're hitting up the bartender for it, you're not functional anymore. And this is all kind of the time I told y'all the story about Ralphie and Slade saying that thing that got in my head, and that had already happened. I told you I didn't quit right away, but I knew I was out on the edge. I knew I was living rough. People were saying things to me. People that actually did care about me, friends and stuff, were Like, hey man, you might need to ease off this shit. I tell you, my drug dealer came and saw me do comedy one night. He's like, I don't want to sell you this shit no more because you're gonna ruin your life. You're too good at this other thing. You know you're not doing well when your drug dealer says, "Hey man, it's time to cut you off." I got asked to do a show with some other Houston comics. It was around Christmas, and it was the Marines do this thing, the Toys for Tots, and it was a Toys for Tot drive show. They were trying to get Toys for Tots, and we were all going to go perform on the show for free. It was in a nice venue downtown, and there's another comic on the show named Johnny, he's a Houston comic, and another comic on the show named Sean uh, that I knew pretty well. Sean's one of the darkest comedians you ever met in your life. Sean had some debilitating arthritis, and he'd been on all kinds of drugs his whole life trying to fix it. And Sean had a very dark sense of humor. He's a little blonde-headed guy, and he could get away with saying some of the craziest shit. You know, I seen this dude walk rooms. He was problematic in his own ways, but just another misfit and derelict like the rest of us. Me and Sean always got along, but Sean kind of talked like this. Hey, Jerry. Hey, I heard you know where to get some stuff. I was like, yeah, Sean, I got a hookup, but I don't think I have my car back yet. Maybe I have my car back. Maybe I was just riding with somebody else. So yeah, I got a hookup. This is my car was still in the shop when this happened. I got a hookup. Yeah, I got a hookup, Sean. Johnny's got a car. He can take us over there. So sure enough, we hop in this little red car Johnny had at the time. Sean had toured with David Tell. He had some David Tell money and stuff going on. He was in Men in Black too. Had some things going for him. A lot of stuff was falling apart, but he had some things going for him. He had a little money in his pocket. We got this 8 ball from my hookup and went to a couple bars and shut a couple bars down. And then at the time, Sean's girlfriend sold real estate. She was a realtor. And he's like, I know a place we can go. And we go in this little car and we go over somewhere on the west side of Houston. There's these condos, these newly built condos. And he has the code to one of them. So we just pull up in there and park and we go in this condo. He ain't got no furniture or nothing. And we finish the rest of the party supplies. It's that point in the night where everybody's looking around. You got any more? You got any more? You got any more? You got any more? Nobody's got any more. Nobody's owning up to it. I'm still in my suit, my ostrich skin shit, snakeskin boots. I go find an empty bedroom on the bottom floor condo and pass out. I could go to sleep on that shit. I don't know how, but I was just one of those people who could. I eat a steak, go to sleep. And Sean went upstairs, I guess, find him a room or something. And I heard him and Johnny cutting up for a little bit, and then I passed out. I woke up. It was like 7, 8 in the morning, 7 in the morning. The sun just peeking through the windows. I go out there to look, and on a piece of paper, Johnny has scribbled a note. Had to go to my dad's house in Victoria. Sorry, guys. I think he got freaked out or something in the middle of the night and left. I'm like, shit, I'm stuck on the west side of Houston, no car. I hear this weird noise going on upstairs. And can't tell what's happening. Against my better judgment, I decide to go up there and check it out. And of course, I get to the top of the stairs, and in the middle of a bedroom on the floor, Sean is buck naked, and furiously masturbating as best he can with his arthritic hands and hollering. It's just one of those things like, yeah, all right. And I just walked down the stairs or walked right out of that condo and I walked to the bus stop and caught a bus over close to where I was staying at and just went. I remember walking down the street in that suit and, 8 o'clock in the morning, eyes bloodshot, nose burned out. There's a song by Blue October where he says, walking like a burnout porn star. Just, it was just that feeling like everything's too bright. Like, what are you doing with your life, dude? This ain't no way to live. You're gonna die, man. This is who you want to hang out. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you want to hang out with in part. No, man. You know, those next day retribution blues. I know I got my car back right after that because I left it parked up at the wet spot, this little bar we would hang out at all the time. I left it parked up at the wet spot one night. I was real bad, but I would just leave the windows, the doors unlocked stuff. I didn't want nobody to break no window. It's just my little shit box. I went home with some gal. I think it must have been Breck. It must have been right around the time I was dating Breck. Come back the next morning, get back to my car, and there's some hobo's blanket in the back seat. Smells like 9 kinds of cat crapped on it. And the hobo has stolen my suit. He stole my suit and my boots and a can of Axe body spray and my my taking care of business sunglasses. Boy, I got in that car. I drove all around the hood looking for some good looking homeless fella in my suit that smelled good. I was, I never did find it. Never did find my suit. There's a homeless dude out there looking fly as hell, though. Couldn't believe it. He stole my suit, man. I leave my doors open, man. One more tick for the maybe it's time to start partying. Pros and cons list. You know, just one more tick. Like, what are you doing with your life, bro? And it also sort of kind of snapped me out of that era where I was felt like I needed to have all that to get on stage. There's also me and Pete we were getting distant because he had done kind of got in between me and Rachel's stuff, and I didn't like that, and it was causing beef between us. And him and his wife had gotten divorced, and he was drinking really hard, living in a condo and screwing everything at walk. He was a whole problem, man. In fact, it wasn't very much longer after that. We were at the laugh stop one night after hours hanging out, and Pete's drunk, and he goes out there and he gets in. There's a guy in a Jeep Cherokee that pulls up and says something about how we're all hanging out on the sidewalk or something. Tony Mandola owned a restaurant over there, and it was one of his managers, Tony Mandola, whatever his name was. Big deal in Houston at the time. He a bunch of fancy restaurants and stuff. And anyway, his manager said something, and of course Pete and the manager get into it. I'll never forget this. The dude was driving a green Jeep Cherokee, and Pete's like arguing with him in his face, right? Like standing in front of him. And guy says something to him. Pete reaches off in the window and grabs the guy by the throat or something. And I'm trying to stop. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? And I'm running over there trying to stop it. And the dude in the Jeep Cherokee floors it and just run. I'd never seen anybody fall like Pete, like a cartoon, just straight down and with his feet up in the air like a cartoon, man, with that Jeep Cherokee hit him. Of course, he got a metal plate in the head. We don't know if it killed him or what. He's all groggy and weird. Just one more little tick, like, bro, what are you doing with your life? Why are you hanging out with these people, man? That's right around the time I decided to quit doing all that. I tell you, quitting that stuff's easy. You just delete all the contacts in your phone that can get it for you. Luckily, my main guy just I told y'all about Big Gene. He'd gotten killed, and Said, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this crap no more. It's gonna kill me. I'm gonna end up in a hotel room, something, side of the road. The weirdest thing about quitting that stuff is I done it so long that after about 3 or 4 days I was okay. I was like, yeah, I wasn't, I kind of wanted it, but it wasn't like a drive like I had to have it. It wasn't like cigarettes, like trying to quit cigarettes. That's good lord. But I remember it was about a week or two later. I was taking a shower, good hot steamy shower, and I tilted my head back to rinse my hair out. And all of a sudden, I guess there must have been something stuck up there I hadn't found yet. That crap run down my throat, and I was, woo, buddy. But I'm really thankful I didn't go out and get no more that night. But I had to sit there and ride that back down. I was like, oh, okay. Well, if it takes that long to get out of your system, I definitely don't need no more of that crap. I thought I was going to have a heart attack that shower that mess kicked in. Now I'm gonna bother to tell you the rest of the story. Y'all know what happens next. I kind of get my shit together. I uh I find a way to win over the heart of the girl I love. Y'all have heard all that story. Yeah. I won my girl. And then we moved in a little house over there off Althea, got us a little house over there. Learned how to be together, live with somebody. Of course, me and David lives in the neighborhood right beside us. Me and David have gotten tight. We're hanging out together all the time. You know, we're just doing it. In fact, I think I was already working. I think he gave me a job at the transmission shop. I started working for him as a manager of the transmission shop. We're hanging together all the time, buddy. We're like all the time, and we started doing projects, work on cars stuff together. I found a '68 Bronco I wanted. It was out in College Station. Me and David went out there, picked it up, and bought it. David fronted me the money for it, and I said, "Man, I'm gonna sell that Contour. I'll get you money back for that Bronco." I did. Back then, there was I sold that. I listed on Craigslist. I listed that Contour on Craigslist for like $2,500. Good running, clean little car. I should have kept it, but I was stupid. I wanted to fix up this Bronco that was an absolute basket case. That piece of shit. I got my money back out of Bronco too, but I said, man, I'm gonna list this thing on Craigslist. Well, there was a big scam back then. These Nigerian dudes that hit you up on Craigslist like, oh, I want that car. I want to have it shipped. Yada yada. I'll send you the check for the payment and the shipping, and then you go put the check in your bank account. And 3 or 4 days later, your bank calls you, tells you the check's a fraudulent check. Usually after they already have the car. Well, I had 2 or 3 guys do this, and of course, I knew the scam, and I was like, yeah, you're not getting my car. And sure enough, every time the check would turn out to be fraudulent. Then a dude calls me one day, and it clearly Nigerian accent. He goes, I want to take the car to New York. I want to buy the car. I was like, yeah, okay, buddy. I said, well, I'll tell you what, you want to buy the car. He said, will you take a check? I said, no, I won't take no check. But you want to buy the car, you show up with $2,500 cash money, and you can take the car in New York City or wherever the hell you want to take it. I don't really give a damn what you do with it after that. But you show up in person. I said, car. Boy, lo and behold, Saturday morning, a whole Ford Taurus full of, I mean, not a Ford Taurus, Mercedes pulls up in front of my little house with a whole family of Nigerian people in it. And these 2 dudes are brothers, and they're buying the car for the brother because he's going to New York City and they're trying to set him up. And I'm still like, am I getting scammed? Until they whipped out the cash and gave you the cash money for the car. I was like, well, I don't know if you can fake cash, but it looks real to me. That's going in the bank. And I gave him the car left. Sure enough, turned out to be, it was not counterfeit money. I actually sold a car to a Nigerian dude on Craigslist and did not get scammed. I've got to be like one of one. I got to be like one of one. I actually sold a car. Craigslist was a bomb back then. It's got crazy now. Back then it was a bomb, man. We used that thing for everything. That's where we're gonna wrap it up today. I'm gonna we're gonna do some testimonials, if you will, some comments from last week. Once again, I am prepared. So let's pull these boogers up, see what we got. At JS Texan Jeff. Oh, there's old Texan Jeff. That's my buddy. Hey, JW, there's nothing wrong with tearing up remembering time of your dad. It's great that he spent his free time with you, helping you with that old truck. That's what dads are for, to do stuff, no matter what small, no matter what it is. Not all dads live up to that responsibility. I try my best for my 7-year-old son. Well, you're doing the job already. You're showing up. That's the thing. I always, my dad showed up. I wasted a lot of time being mad at him, and there's still stuff I don't agree with him about. We should probably still go 15 rounds about some of that, but he showed up, and I think it's the biggest part. He showed up, and he was there for me. Times like that, just like in this story, helped me figure out that contour. He showed up. He didn't like how I was living my life. Certainly didn't approve of it. He showed up for his big brother when he needed a floor in his trailer house. When his brother didn't answer the phone, he showed up for him. My dad shows up. You're already doing the job. You're showing up for that 7-year-old. At Migu _ Weeb. That old trick with stuffing the pilot bearing. I learned that, but with a loaf instead of grease. A loaf, like a loaf of bread. What? Man, come back and tell me what that is. I'm curious what a loaf is that I don't know about. I learned a cool trick with bread one time. This old plumber, I was doing all these repairs on this old building, and the plumbing, the valves are just shot to hell, and you'd shut the valves off, they'd still leak and everything, and you're trying to, uh, sweat copper pipe and stuff. It's hard to do when the daggum pipes are still leaking. I wasn't that good a plumber, anyways. This old plumber I was working with, he carried a loaf of bread in his truck, and he had an old line or something like that that was seeping and leaking. He'd take a piece of bread and wad it up, and stick it up in that line. That bread would absorb that water, give you time to make the repair. When you get done, you turn the water on. That bread just disintegrates to nothing. Old white bread, just disintegrates to nothing. Boy, I use that trick many a time on the leaking pipes and stuff when I'm trying to do a repair. Worked pretty good. I used it a lot when I was doing sprinkler piping. Worked pretty damn good. Never had it clog up anything. You don't throw the crust in there. You just use the white part, tear the crust off. Just use the white bunchy part, smush it up in there. I want to know if you're talking about a loaf of bread, Migu. At Sick 13. I was born into a Ford family with a Dodge in the woodpile, which became mine after I paid for it. Did not grow up in Dodge country, tough sledding before the internet. Woo, Bopar parts were always a pain in the ass to find. I bet you did have a hell of a time with that thing. Me and my buddy William Lee Martin, we was driving through Oklahoma the other day. And of course, I'm always shopping everybody's backyard, seeing what you got. And Oklahoma is a treasure trove. Because don't shit rust there. And everybody's got, Oklahoma's got so many good backyard wrecking yards that if you don't have at least 3 school buses, I don't even bother looking in your yard, because that's how abundant Oklahoma is with junk cars and stuff. And we come up over this hill. There's this house up there, and there's about 16 to 17 trucks on this piece of property, all grouped up and parked around, and every one of them is a General Motors product, except for one Dodge. And I looked at Bill. I go, I guarantee that Dodge is owned by his disappointment son. Can you tell he had that Dodge up and was working on it? I was like, that's the kid, that's the black sheep kid that bought that Dodge. Brought, they give that kid unmerciful hell every time that Dodge breaks down. Whew, you had a tough go of it, sick Coy. All right. Tell you, comics are flawed, but we're the same. And this is like, it's not a great story, but this is when I transformed into something. Not only did was I going through the stuff with the drugs and stuff, but I was transforming into becoming a comic. Like I was making my bread doing comedy, or working in bars. And whereas before that, my whole life had been blue collar work. So this is like the first major shift for me when I'm doing this other thing, like all the time. That's all I'm doing. It's when I transformed into when I really became it's my chrysalis, if you will. My chrysalis. I ain't no particular type of butterfly, but I got pretty wings because butterflies got wings, daddy. You don't know about hard times struggling in your cocoon to break free, only to find out the world's still hard when you're pretty, daddy. I love Dusty Rhodes. I did have people were reaching out to me. People were trying to get me back on track. I just wasn't listening to none of them. One of my favorite comics was a lady named Brett Butler. I loved working with Brett Butler, and I was working with her back in these days at one time. And Brett Butler knows a little something about addiction and hard times. She's been through some rough shit in her life, and she was always real sweet to me. People got mixed stories about her, but she was always sweet as shit to me. And somewhere around that time, I had to take her to radio one morning. And when you go do radio, it's like 5 or 6 in the morning. Of course, I was bleary and been up doing things I was doing all night. And I go pick up Brett at her hotel, and I'm driving her over to the radio station for the club. And she usually kind of chatty with me. She's kind of quiet and watching me a lot. We get to a radio station. We got to wait in the lobby for a little while for them to be ready for her to come on air. And she was just staring at me. She was like sitting across from me. She goes, "It's killing you, right?" And I, of course, what's killing me? And she goes, "You can play dumb with me if you want. I know what you're doing." Because I'm telling you right now, it'll steal your joy. It'll take everything you love away from you. And you're at a part right now where you could get away from it, but you get too much farther off in, you're gonna have a whole lot of help. And then she went in there to do radio like nothing happened and killed it on the radio and come back out and never said another word about it. True to form, but she flat told me. And last time I talked to her, she was leaving Houston, and she goes, "I meant what I said." So I know you did. She said, "Yeah, but you ain't gonna listen to me." That was the last time I got to talk to her. The last time I worked with her, anyways. It's a long time ago. I don't know if there's something to be gleaned from today's episode. If there is, it's don't limit yourself. If a freaking dirtbag like I was can make all this mean something and turn it into something, then I know you damn sure can. I ain't no more. I ain't special. If I could turn it around, you can turn it around. May not read exactly like my story, but you got something inside of you. If you're don't let that shit win. If you're struggling with that. Hey, you guys all the time. I'm rooting for you. I am. Hope I get to meet some of you. I've gotten to meet a few of you at the shows, and that's been really fun. Of course, we got a big run coming up. We're going to run through, we got a run in Texas for me and Sam Miller, going to the Vulcan Gas Company in Austin. I'm excited about that. And then we got me and my buddy Barry Laminek doing a little run through, where are we going? Oklahoma. We're going to go to Stillwater, El Reno. We're going to go to OKC. We're not doing a show. We're doing a private show in OKC. We're going to Tulsa, Looney Bin in Tulsa. Also in January, I'm being in Louisville, Kentucky, January 25th. And we're trying to do a Cincinnati show on Thursday, a little place just north of Cincinnati. And then I think we're going to try to do something in Paducah, Kentucky on Friday. So maybe like a Cincinnati, Paducah, Louisville run. If you're in any of those places, close enough you can come. I'd love meeting you guys and love to see you guys at the show. Like it when I can show you all this other thing I can do that's even better. It's my favorite thing I do. I'm rooting for you, man. I got mad love for all of you, man. All I've been trying to tell y'all with this whole thing is I ain't special. Anybody can turn it around. Look forward to seeing y'all next week. I'm JW and I love you. I can picture every move that I make. Getting lost in love is your first mistake. Sundown and you better take care. If I find you've been creeping around my back stairs.